begin with prayer.
Lasst uns mit Gebet anfangen.
Dear Father in heaven,
Lieber Vater im Himmel,
we thank you, Lord, for your word,
wir danken dir für dein Wort
and we thank you that we can always learn new things from you.
und wir danken dir, dass wir immer Neues von dir lernen können.
And we ask you to now please remind us of everything we have already studied,
Und wir bitten, dass du uns an all das erinnerst, was wir bereits studiert haben.
and that we can then also receive a blessing from your word this evening.
Sodass wir auch einen Segen von deinem Wort heute Abend erhalten können.
May you help us to now put aside the thoughts that would hinder your word to take root in us,
Und bitte hilft uns, all diese Gedanken beiseite zu legen, die verhindern würden, dass dein Wort Wurzel in uns schlägt.
and that we would now focus upon your word.
Und dass wir jetzt völlig auf dein Wort fokussieren können.
And we ask and pray in Jesus' name.
Und wir bitten und beten in Jesu Namen.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so I posted the notes in the live stream group,
Ich habe die Notizen in der Livestream-Gruppe gepostet.
and this evening we want to look a little bit at the story of Jehu.
Und heute Abend wollen wir die Geschichte von Jehu anschauen.
But before we come there,
Sorry.
before we go there,
Aber noch bevor wir dazu kommen,
I just want to remind us of the story of Sodom and also Judges 19, what we looked at this morning.
ich möchte nur zur Erinnerung an die Geschichte von Sodom und Richter 19, was wir heute Morgen angeschaut haben, kurz zeigen.
Okay, so let's go to Genesis 19.
Gehen wir zu 1. Buch Mose 19.
And let's read these first few verses.
Und lesen wir diesen ersten paar Verse.
It says, "And there came two angels to Sodom at even. And Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground." Okay, and then it says, "And he said, Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early, and go on your ways. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night. And he pressed upon them greatly." Okay, so
Das ist Vers 3.
where did we see, where do we mark this here on the line, these first few verses?
So, was haben wir gesehen? Wo markieren wir diesen ersten 2, 3 Versen auf der Linie?
Oh, sorry, it's the midnight.
Yeah,
Das
yes.
ist der Mitternacht.
So it's here this time period, right?
Also hier diese Zeitperiode hier.
So you come at even, and then you need to pray, sigh and cry, right? And press your invitation upon Christ.
Du kommst zum Abend an und du musst klagen und heulen und deine Fürbitte Christus anpressen.
Okay. And we saw basically Judges 19. We saw the same story here at the second Sunday.
Und Richter 19 haben wir gesehen, dieselbe Geschichte hier an der zweiten
It also
Sonntagsgesetz.
came at even, and then he was inviting them into the house, and the same story took place.
Auch zum Abend an, er lud sie in den Haus hinein, dieselbe Geschichte fand statt.
Okay, so therefore here you are now inviting Christ, and here you will come now to wash your feet, right?
So, hier lädst du Christus ein und hier wird er kommen, um deine Füße zu waschen.
Okay, but while they were now doing this foot washing and communing together,
Aber während sie diese Fußwaschung taten und miteinander beisammen waren,
who came then?
wer kam dann?
Yeah, the men of Sodom, right?
Diese Männer von Sodom.
And what did they do?
Was taten sie?
They surrounded the house. Okay.
Umzingelt das Haus.
So, and we understand this is a type for the sixth plague.
Wir verstehen, das ist ein Typus für die 6. Plage.
And what do they do at the end of the sixth plague?
Und was tun sie am Ende der 6. Plage?
Yeah, they surround God's people, right?
Umzingeln Gottes Volk.
It's the battle of
Es ist der
Armageddon that will then start on the seventh plague. Right?
Kampf um Armageddon, die am 7. Plage anfangen.
So here, God's people surrounded.
So, Gottes Volk umzingelt.
Okay, so and this is this illustration, and how many shut doors do we have in the story here?
Das ist diese Darstellung. Wie viele geschlossene Türen haben wir in dieser Darstellung?
2 times, right?
2.
So one here and one here.
So, ein hier und ein da.
Okay, so. At the end, they were smitten with double blindness, right?
Und am Ende wurden sie mit doppeltes Blindheit geschlagen.
Okay, I mean the Bible doesn't say double blindness, but this is why it says it was double blindness.
So, die Bibel sagt nicht doppeltes Blindheit, aber Ellen White sagt es.
Okay, good. Now let's go to this first quote in the notes.
So, gehen wir jetzt zu diesem ersten Zitat in den Notizen.
And it's also a quote I think at least most of us are familiar with.
Das ist ein Zitat, die meisten von uns vertraut ist.
And it's about Sister White being in Battle Creek.
Ellen White, als hier in Battle Creek war.
Okay, it says here, in this state of things, it was decided that we would return to Battle Creek and there remain while the roads were in a muddy, broken up condition, and that I would there complete number 12. That is a writing of her, I don't know which exactly number 12 refers to, but one of her writings. Okay.
Diese Nummer 12 ist eine von ihren Schriften.
My husband was very anxious to see his brethren at Battle Creek, and speak to them and rejoice with them in the work which God was doing for him. I gathered up my writings, and we started on our journey. On the way we held 2 meetings in Orange, and had evidence that the church was profited and encouraged. We were ourselves refreshed by the Spirit of the Lord. That night I dreamed that I was in Battle Creek, looking out from the side glass at the door, and saw a company marching up to the house 2 and 2. So that's now her dream, okay?
Das ist ihr Traum jetzt.
They looked stern and determined. I knew them well and turned to open the parlor door to receive them, but thought I would look again. The scene was changed. The company now presented the appearance of a Catholic procession. One bore in his hand a cross, another a reed. And as they approached, the one carrying a reed made a circle around the house, saying 3 times, "This house is proscribed. The goods must be confiscated. They have spoken against our holy order." Okay, so here we can see what do they do here.
So hier können wir sehen, was tun sie.
Surround the house,
Sie
right?
umgeben das Haus.
And they basically now seizing
all
all the goods. Yes.
Sie beschlagnahmen die Güter.
But it's her former brethren, right?
Aber es ist ihre ehemalige Geschwister.
Okay, and also in the story of Judges 19, who came, surrounded the house?
Und auch in die Geschichte von Richter 19, wer ist es, der kam, um das Haus zu umzingeln?
It was the Benjamins.
Benjamins,
Das
right?
war die Benjamiter.
Okay, so it's in a sense those that would now rise up against God's truth, the former brethren. Okay.
In dem Sinne ist es diejenigen, die gegen die Wahrheit auflehnen, also Gottes ehemalige Geschwister.
Okay, so therefore I want to suggest it's the same illustration that now this Catholic procession here, the former brethren of Battle Creek surround the house.
Ich würde
Okay.
dann vorschlagen, dass es derselbe Darstellung ist, hier die ehemalige Geschwister, die im Battle Creek den Haus umgeben.
Okay, let's continue.
Lesen wir weiter.
Terror seized me, and I ran through the house, out of the north door, and found myself in the midst of a company, some of whom I knew, but I dared not speak a word to them for fear of being betrayed. I tried to seek a retired spot where I might weep and pray without meeting eager, inquisitive eyes wherever I turned. I repeated frequently, "If I could only understand this, if they will tell me what I have said or what I have done." I wept and prayed much as I saw our goods confiscated. I tried to read sympathy or pity for me in the looks of those around me, and marked the countenances of several whom I thought would speak to me and comfort me if they did not fear that they would be observed by others. I made one attempt to escape from the crowd, but seeing that I was watched, I concealed my intentions. So what can you see here? Basically, what is she fearing here?
So, was kann man hier sehen? Was fürchtet sie?
yeah, everybody observed everybody else, and she feared to be betrayed, right?
Jeder beobachtete einander und sie fürchtete, verraten zu sein.
Okay, so I made an attempt to escape from this crowd, but seeing that I was watched, I concealed my intentions. I commenced weeping aloud and saying, "If they would only tell me what I have done or what I have said." My husband, who was sleeping in a bed in the same room, heard me weeping aloud and awoke me. My pillow was wet with tears, and a sad depression of spirits was upon me. Okay, so therefore, in this experience here, afraid of everybody in a sense. You don't know whom you can trust. Okay?
So, deswegen in dieser Erfahrung, du hast Angst vor jedem, du weißt nicht, wem du vertrauen kannst.
Okay, and everybody is kind of also shaky, and nobody knows whom you can trust. Okay.
Und alle sind verunsichert, die wissen nicht, wer sie vertrauen können.
Okay, now let's go to Micah chapter 7.
Lass uns jetzt zu Micha 7 gehen.
Beginning in verse 1.
Fangen wir in Vers 1 an.
Because Micah now speaks about this very same situation. Okay.
Micha spricht über diese genaue Situation.
It says, "Woe is me, for I am as when they have gathered the summer fruits, as the grape gleanings of the vintage. There is no cluster to eat, my soul desired the first ripe fruit. The good man is perished out of the earth, and there is none upright among men. They all lie in wait for blood, they hunt every man his brother with a net." Okay, so what does it remind you of here in verse 2?
Vers 2, woran erinnert sich das?
Yes,
Was
okay.
wir gerade gelesen haben.
And it says here, there's not one upright man among men. Right?
Es sagt, es gibt keinen Aufrichtige unter Menschen.
Where else do we read this?
Wo lesen wir das noch?
Yes, in Romans 3, right?
Römer 3.
Now let's go there.
Lass uns dahin.
Let's begin in verse 9.
Fangen wir in Vers 9.
And now Paul here compares the Jews with the Gentiles, or the Seventh-day Adventists with the Gentiles. Okay.
Paulus vergleicht hier die Juden mit den Heiden oder die 7-Tags-Adventisten mit den Heiden.
It says, "What then? Are we better than they? No, in no wise. For we have before proved both Jews and Gentiles that they are all under sin. As it is written, there's none righteous, no, not one. There's none that understandeth, there's none that seeketh after God. They are all gone out of the way, they are together become unprofitable. There's none that doeth good, no, not one. Their throat is as an open sepulchre, with their tongues they have used deceit. The poison of asp is under the lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways, and the way of peace have they not known. There's no fear of God before their eyes." Okay, so
Das ist Vers 18.
Paul is here describing the character of man, right?
Paulus beschreibt hier die Charakter des Menschen.
Okay, and in this time here, what is revealed?
Und in dieser Zeit hier, was ist es, was geoffenbart ist?
Character, right?
Charakter.
Okay, so basically this group here, that is now the wicked, they reveal this character here.
So
Okay.
diese Gruppe hier, das sind die Bösen, die offenbaren diesen Charakter, wie hier
Yeah, they
beschrieben.
reveal the character of man.
Sie
Okay.
offenbaren die Charakter von Menschen.
Yeah, and only how can you only stand through this time?
Und wie ist es, dass du durch diese Zeit bestehen kannst?
What must yes, exactly.
Christus festhalten und seinen Charakter
And how do you do this?
zeigen. Und wie tust du das?
Yes, by faith. Okay.
Durch Glaube,
Yes.
die Verheißung.
What must you have?
Was musst du haben?
You must have gathered the oil, right?
Also du musst das Öl gesammelt haben.
Okay, you need the grace, right?
Du brauchst die Gnade.
Okay, so therefore, unless you have the grace here,
So, es sei denn, dass du hier die Gnade hast,
you will reveal this character that is written here in Romans 3.
du wirst
Okay.
diesen Charakter, die hier in Römer 3 beschrieben ist, manifestieren.
And or in Micah 7 verse 2.
Oder dasselbe wie in Mika 7, Vers 2.
And we can also see it today, right, in this war, Ukraine war at the moment, for instance.
Wir können das auch heutzutage zum Beispiel in diesem Ukraine-Krieg sehen.
You can see both sides are totally corrupt, right?
Man kann sehen, dass beide Seiten total korrupt
Yeah,
sind.
they basically lie and none is really righteous of them. Okay.
Sie lügen und keine von denen ist gerecht.
I mean, obviously some will play the role of the righteous, yeah, and some of the wicked, okay.
Einige werden die Rolle des Gerechten spielen und anderen die Rolle des Bösen.
But they're all totally corrupt.
Aber
Okay.
die sind alle korrupt.
Okay. So now let's go back to Micah 7.
So, zurück zu den Notizen, Micha 7,
And so let's continue in verse 3.
Vers 3.
That they may do evil with both hands earnestly. The prince asketh, and the judge asketh for reward. And the great man, he uttereth his mischievous desire. So they wrap it up. The best of them is as a briar. The most upright is sharper than a thorn hedge. The day of thy watchman and thy visitation cometh. Now shall be their perplexity. Trust ye not in a friend, put ye not confidence in a guide. Keep the doors of thy mouth from her that lieth in thy bosom. Okay, so here,
Samson,
yes, exactly, right.
also Simson.
So that's the story, the time where you cannot really trust anybody.
So,
Okay,
das ist der Zeit, wo du eigentlich niemand vertrauen kannst.
you must have a trust in God, and because this is a work that only God can do for you.
Du musst
Okay?
ein Vertrauen in Gott haben, denn dies ist ein Werk, die nur Gott in dich vollbringen kann.
So if you put any trust here in flesh, you will fail.
So, wenn du dein Vertrauen ins Fleisch hier legst, dann wirst du sicher versagen.
Yes, and this verse 5, it says
Vers 5 sagt es,
at the end, it says,
Am
keep
Ende.
the doors of thy mouth from her that lieth in thy bosom.
so, halte die Türe deines Mundes von diejenigen, die auf dein Brust liegt.
And Brother Scott already rightly said, it's the story of Samson.
Und das ist die Geschichte von Simson.
Okay, so let's go there. Let's go to Judges 16.
So, gehen wir dahin, das ist in Richter 16.
I just copied a few verses. Okay, 4 to 10.
Sorry?
4 to 10.
Achso, die Versen 4 bis 10.
It says, and it came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up unto her and said unto her, entice him, and see wherein his great strength lieth, and by what means we may prevail against him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and we will give thee every one of us 1,100 pieces of silver. And Delilah said to Samson, tell me, I pray thee, wherein thy great strength lieth, and wherewith thou mightest be bound to afflict thee. And Samson said unto her, if they bind me with 7 green withs, that were never dried, then shall I be weak, and be as another man. Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 green withs, which had not been dried, and she bound him with them. Now there were men lying in wait, abiding with her in the chamber. And she said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he brake the withs as a thread of tow is broken when it toucheth the fire. So his strength was not known. And Delilah said unto Samson, behold, thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Now tell me, I pray thee, wherewith thou mightest be bound. And so she was this woman trying to bind him, yes.
So, sie
Okay.
war diese Frau, die versuchte, ihn zu binden.
Okay, and how many times did she try?
Und wie oft versuchte sie dies? 3.
3 times,
So, 3-mal.
and then at the 4th time,
Und bei das 4.
he finally told her. Okay,
Sagte sie letztendlich.
okay, so and then he got bound. Okay,
Und dann ist er gebunden worden.
maybe let's just go quickly to the story in the Bible.
So, gehen wir in unseren Bibeln zu der Geschichte, Richter 16.
Yes. Verse 15
Vers 15
and forwards.
und danach.
It says, And she said unto him, How canst thou say, I love thee, when thine heart is not with me? Thou hast mocked me these 3 times, and hast not told me wherein thy great strength lieth. And it came to pass, when she pressed him daily with her words, and urged him, so that his soul was vexed unto death, that he told her all his heart, and said unto her, There hath not come a razor upon mine head, for I have been a Nazarite unto God from my mother's womb. If I be shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. Okay, so so she annoyed him, right? That's this false pressing upon you, right?
So, sie drängte auf ihn ein und das ist dieses falsches Drängen.
You need to press upon Christ,
Du musst auf Christus eindringen,
but Satan, he will press upon you.
aber
Okay.
Satan, der wird auf dich eindringen.
Okay, so and what was he eventually in verse 16?
In Vers 16, was war er letztendlich?
The soul was vexed unto death, right?
Seine Seele war gedrängt bis auf den Tod.
So, and this is here the point when you come literally face to face with death, right?
Hier ist der Punkt, wo du buchstäblich vor dem Tod kommst.
So he basically then didn't have strength to withstand this point anymore,
So,
right?
er hat nicht die Kraft, diesen Punkt hier zu widerstehen.
And therefore now he surrendered to Satan
So, er übergab sich Satan,
by telling her his secret. Okay.
indem dass er sein Geheimnis erzählte.
Okay, and then he got bound
Und dann ist er gebunden
in verse
worden.
21.
Vers 21.
But the Philistines took him and put out his eyes. So what did they do?
So, was taten sie? Mit dem Blind.
Made him blind,
Mit
right?
dem Blind gemacht.
So that's basically his close of probation. Yeah.
Schluss der Gnadenzeit.
Okay, and then they brought him down to Gaza and bound him with fetters of brass, and he did grind in the prison house. So he was now bound and made a prisoner.
So, er ist gebunden und ein Gefangener gemacht.
Okay, so all right. So therefore, this is this time, yeah, where you're not to trust even the one lying in your bosom.
So,
Okay.
deswegen, das hier ist die Zeit, wo du noch nicht mal diejenigen, die auf deine Brust liegen, vertraust.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, was it not Judas and John that lay on the breast, right? Judas, they not.
Yeah, I mean,
John.
yeah, John. Yes, John laid on Christ's breast, right?
John's not a strange woman.
No, but he couldn't trust them, right? They all left him in Gethsemane, right?
So it doesn't say anywhere that he didn't trust him. It's just you saying that. I'm saying it's just you can't make up the illustration. John loved Christ and that's why he was on his bosom. So it's a different illustration.
I mean, only because it's a similar illustration doesn't necessarily. This must be the same lesson behind it. Okay.
Also nur weil es eine ähnliche Darstellung ist, heißt nicht unbedingt, dass es dieselbe Lektion ist darin.
Okay. So, you want to make a point?
I just wanted to say maybe the parallel also the story of Joseph with Potiphar's wife, that she was pressing him also daily.
Yes.
Ob das ein Vergleich ist
Joseph
mit
represents of course the other
Josef mit Potiphars Frau, weil sie drängte auch auf ihn täglich an.
But he
Yeah,
fled
that's-
from it.
That's true.
Und
But-
er flüchtet von sie.
Proverbs 7.
But I think the story of Joseph
Yes.
is in here.
Und
Right?
ich glaube, die Geschichte von Josef ist hier drin.
It's like when Mordecai was daily urged to bow down.
Als Mordecai täglich gedrungen worden war, sich zu beugen.
It's the same test.
Yes.
This one's just an increase in, because you see that it's just increasing. That's all.
Es ist derselbe Test, es wächst nur an Intensität.
Yeah, so when Satan will press himself upon you here daily, and obviously here.
So
will
Satan
continue.
wird sich täglich auf dich hier eindringen und auch natürlich hier und
Yes.
dann hier.
Okay. So, good. Now let's go back to Micah 7,
Gehen wir zurück zur Micha 7,
verse 6.
Vers 6.
It says, for the son dishonoreth the father, the daughter riseth up against the mother, the daughter-in-law against the mother-in-law, a man's enemies are the men of his own house. So where else do we see this?
Wo sehen wir dies noch?
Christ said this, right?
Sorry?
Christ said this also.
So, Christus sagt dieses auch.
Quoting this.
Yes, let's go to Matthew 10.
Gehen wir zu Matthäus 10.
And let's begin in verse 17.
Wir beginnen im Vers 17.
It says, but beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in the synagogues, and ye shall be brought before governors and kings, for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. So this begins here at the midnight cry, right? When you begin giving your testimony, right?
Das fängt hier am Mitternachtsruf an, wenn du anfängst, dein Zeugnis zu geben.
Yeah, but at the end, this is when you make your final confession, right? The final testimony.
Aber am Ende gibst du dein letztes Zeugnis ab.
Okay. And it also says here in verse 22,
In Vers 22 sagt es.
or 21, 22.
21, 22.
And the brother shall deliver up the brother to death, and the father the child, and the children shall rise up against their parents, and cause them to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endureth to the end shall be saved. Okay, so we must endure to the end of the test, for the first group here.
Du musst bis zum Ende des Testes aushalten, für die erste Gruppe, zwar hier.
Okay, and then jump down to verse 32.
Und dann bis Vers 32.
This is now this final confession.
Das
Okay.
ist dieses letztes Bekenntnis.
Whosoever therefore shall confess me before men, him will I confess also before my Father which is in heaven. But whosoever shall deny me before men, him will I also deny before my Father which is in heaven. Think not that I am come to send peace on the earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foes shall be they of his own household. So that's what we read in Micah 7.
So, das ist, was wir in Micha 7 gelesen haben.
Yes. So it's here when you now will make your final confession in this final test.
So,
Okay.
es ist hier, wo du dein letztes Bekenntnis geben wirst in deinem finalen Test.
Yeah. Then you cannot trust anybody. Okay.
Dann kannst du niemandem vertrauen.
Because your daughter will deliver you up,
Weil deine Tochter wird dich ausliefern.
or the parents will deliver up the children.
Oder die Eltern den Kindern ausliefern.
And it obviously has a literal application, but also a spiritual application, right?
Natürlich hat das eine buchstäbliche Anwendung, aber auch eines geistlichen.
In a sense, you can become a father to other spiritually speaking, right?
In dem Sinne kannst du ein Vater werden zu anderen, geistlich gesprochen.
Paul was the father to Timothy, for instance,
Zum
right?
Beispiel Paulus war der Vater zu Timotheus.
So in this sense, just says everybody will be able to deliver up
Es
one
sagt
another.
in diesem
Okay.
Sinne, dass jeder imstande wird, den anderen auszuliefern.
Okay.
What is it different before? Who can you trust?
Es ist anders zuvor. Wem kannst du vertrauen?
Yeah, I mean, before the temptation is not so great. Okay.
Davor ist die Versuchung nicht so.
Mhm. So because here it says, what does Christ send here?
Denn was sendet Christus hier?
What does it? Yeah, the sword, right?
Das Schwert.
Okay, so and what is the sword that he will send down here?
Und was ist das Schwert, was er hier senden wird?
Yeah, yes, it's the straight testimony, right?
Das ist der geradlinige
It's
Zeugnis.
basically the latter rain that comes as the former and the latter rain.
Das ist der Spätregen, die als Früh- und Spätregen kommt.
And those that don't bear the straight testimony, they will rise up against it, right?
Und diejenigen, die das nicht aushalten, werden sich dagegen auflehnen.
Okay. So, and therefore he says then, let's just continue. So in verse 36 down to verse, just continue.
Vers 36, weiter jetzt.
And a man's foes shall be they of his own household. He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he that taketh not his cross and followeth after me is not worthy of me. Okay, so this is now this final test where you must go to the cross. Right?
38, das ist dieser finale Test hier, wo du zum Kreuz gehen
It
musst.
already tells us that you must be willing to forsake all. Okay.
Es zeigt uns bereit, dass du bereit sein musst, alles aufzugeben.
And father and mother and children and everything that is dear to you.
Vater und Mutter und Kinder und alles, was dir am Herzen ist.
Yeah. Literally as well as spiritually. Okay.
Buchstäblich als auch geistlich.
Verse 39.
Vers 39.
He that findeth his life shall lose it, and he that loseth his life for my sake shall find it. So this is when you now must be willing to give up your life. Okay, this is when you come face to face with death, literally.
Hier
Okay.
ist es, wo du bereit bist, dein Leben aufgeben zu wollen. Also hier, wo du buchstäblich dem Tod ins Gesicht starrst.
Okay, so all right, everybody can follow.
Kann jeder folgen?
Okay, now let's go back to Micah 7.
Gehen wir zurück zu Micha 7.
Let's continue in verse 7.
Und Vers 7.
And because everybody is your potential enemy in this time,
Jeder ist dein potenzielles Feind in dieser Zeit.
therefore he says in verse 7,
Deswegen sagt er in Vers 7,
therefore I will look unto the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. So God is your only hope and confidence in this time.
so
Okay?
Gott ist deine einziges Hoffnung und Sicherheit in dieser Zeit.
Rejoice not against me, O mine enemy. When I fall, I shall arise. When I sit in darkness, the Lord shall be a light unto me. And who was sitting in darkness in this time?
So wer saß in dieser Zeit in Dunkelheit?
John was in the dungeon,
Okay?
So,
Yes.
Johannes war in der Kerker.
and he sent angels to him, but I'm not sure.
Yes. Okay, you're correct, but I was thinking more about Jonah.
Also ist richtig, aber ich dachte eher an Jona.
Okay, let's go in your Bibles to Jonah.
Geht in unseren Bibeln zum Jona.
Verse 7. That's the point.
Yes, but somehow it doesn't say that he was sitting here in darkness. But maybe wrong in my mind, but it doesn't matter. Let's just maybe it was in Psalms then. Okay, so let's just read here verse. Let's begin in verse 2.
So, fangen wir in Vers 2
It's
an.
when he is in the belly,
Als er im Bauch ist.
and we understand this is the belly here, the belly experience, right?
Verstehen, dass dies hier der Baucherfahrung ist.
It says, and said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me out of the belly of hell, cried I, and thou heardest my voice. So this is when you now cry to God. Right?
Also hier rufst du Gott an.
For thou hast cast me into the deep, in the midst of the seas, and the floods compassed me about, and all thy billows and thy waves passed over me. Then said I am cast out of thy sight, yet I will look again toward thy holy temple. The waters compassed me about, even to the soul, the depth closed me around, the weeds were wrapped about my head. I went down to the bottoms of the mountains, the earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet thou hast brought up my life from corruption, O Lord my God. When my soul fainted within me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came in unto thee, into thine holy temple, that they that observe lying vanities forsake their Sorry?
Lion.
Nothing. They that observe lying vanities forsake their own mercy. But I will sacrifice unto thee with the voice of thanksgiving. I will pay that I have vowed. Salvation is of the Lord. Okay, and then he was delivered.
So, bis Vers 9 und dann wurde er befreit.
Okay, so So this is here, therefore, this time where you cry unto the Lord. Okay.
Hier ist der Zeit, wo du dem Herrn anrufst.
Just check quickly something. Yes. Okay. Let's go to Psalms 107.
Hier zum Psalmen 107.
Because I knew that this story was somehow connected with this darkness. So,
I was looking for it.
Ich wusste, dass diese Geschichte mit der Dunkelheit verbunden war.
so let's begin in verse 14 to 17.
So lesen wir die Versen 14 bis 17.
But let's just begin maybe even in 10,
Oder sogar, wir fangen in Vers 10 an.
just to get the context a little bit. It says, such as sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, being bound in affliction and iron, because they rebelled against the words of God and condemned the counsel of the Most High. Therefore he brought down their heart with labor, they fell down and there was none to help. Then they cried unto the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them out of their distresses. So here it says they rebelled against God, right?
Vers 13. Es sagt hier, dass die gegen Gott rebellierten.
And therefore the Lord brought them into this trouble,
Deswegen hat Gott sie in diesen Trübsal gebracht.
and there was none to help.
Und es gab
Okay.
keinen, die helfen konnte.
So their only trust was in God.
Deren einzigen Vertrauen war in Gott.
And then they cried unto God, and he saved them.
Riefen Gott an und er rettete sie.
And Jonah, he was also somebody who rebelled against God's word, right?
Jona war auch einer, der gegen Gottes Wort rebellierte.
Okay. And what did Isaiah understand when he saw the vision?
Und was hat Jesaja verstanden, als er die Vision sah?
He realized that he was also
Yes.
Er,
On the same condemnation, right?
so, er war unter denselben Verdammnis
And so
gekommen.
we will all see that we are these rebels against God.
So, wir werden alle sehen, dass wir diesen Rebellen sind gegen Gott.
And our only hope there is the Lord.
Unsere einzige Hoffnung ist der Herr.
And then it says, verse 14.
Vers 14 sagt
He
es,
brought them out of darkness and the shadow of death, and brake their bands in sunder. Oh, that man would praise the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men. For he hath broken the gates of brass and cut the bars of iron in sunder. So that's Jonah, right?
das ist Jona.
Because he said basically that these bars were before him, and
in verse 9.
Denn er hat gesagt in der Geschichte von Jona, dass diesen Regeln vor ihm waren.
yes. And then verse 19,
Vers 19.
then they cry unto the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them out of their distresses. Yes, exactly. Okay, so and therefore we see in verse 14, it's when you sit in darkness here, right?
Deswegen können wir sehen in Vers 14, wo du in Finsternis oder in Dunkelheit sitzt.
And then the Lord will break these bars in sunder that hold you captive.
Und dann wird der Herr diese Regeln auseinanderreißen, die dich gefangen halten.
Okay, so this is this great darkness here.
Das ist diese Dunkelheit hier.
And when you look at the cross,
Wenn du das Kreuz betrachtest,
as a time period,
dann
right?
ist eine Zeitperiode.
And this is the third hour,
Das ist die dritte Stunde,
and this is the
dies ist der
sixth hour,
sechste Stunde,
this is the ninth.
hier
Right?
der neunte Stunde.
And what happened at the sixth hour?
Und was geschah zur sechsten Stunde? Da.
Yeah, this midnight darkness, right?
Mitternächtliche Finsternis.
Okay, so therefore this is this great darkness that comes.
Und deswegen, das hier ist diese große Dunkelheit, der kommt.
The Lord has abandoned you.
Yes.
Es wird so scheinen, als hätte der Herr dich verlassen.
Okay. So when you go now back to Micah 7,
Wenn wir zurück zu Micha 7 gehen,
and let's read verse 8 again.
Vers 8 nochmal.
It says, rejoice not against me, O mine enemy. When I fall, I shall arise. When I sit in darkness, the Lord shall be a light unto me. Yeah, which enemy rejoices over you in this time, for instance?
So, welcher Feind frohlockt über dich in diese Zeit?
The former brother.
Revelation.
Yes, the former brethren.
Revelation
Right?
11.
Yes, Revelation 11. Exactly.
Offenbarung 11, also deine ehemaligen Geschwister.
So those that now kill the two witnesses
Diejenigen, die zwei Zeugen
for
umbringen.
3.5 years or days. Okay.
3,5 Jahre oder Tage.
So and now verse 9.
Das ist Vers 9.
I will bear the indignation of the Lord, because I have sinned against him, until he plead my cause and execute judgment for me. He will bring me forth to the light, and I shall behold his righteousness. Okay, so what is it that comes upon you here? What does it say?
So, was ist es, was über dich hier kommt? Was sagt es?
Yeah, God's indignation, right?
Gottes Zorn.
And what is God's indignation against
Was
his people?
ist Gottes Zorn gegen sein Volk?
Yeah, the 25:20, right?
25:20.
Okay, so, but in this illustration, the 25:20 is not the eternal curse where you have no remedy again. Okay.
Diese Darstellung, die 25:20, ist nicht diese ewige Fluch, wo es keine Lösung gibt.
Yeah, but is there a remedy against the curse?
Aber gibt es eine Lösung gegen den Fluch?
Yes, exactly. Okay.
So, das Heilmittel aus Gilead.
But I was thinking about Leviticus 26.
Aber ich habe eher an 3. Buch Mose 26 gedacht.
Yes. So let's go to Leviticus 26.
Gehen wir dahin, 3. Buch Mose 26.
Because here is written the curse, right? God's indignation against his people.
Ist der Fluch geschrieben, also Gottes Zorn gegen sein Volk.
And let's read verse 40 to 42, and this is the remedy.
Wir
Okay.
lesen die Versen 40 bis 42 und das hier ist die Lösung.
It says, if they shall confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their fathers with their trespass which they trespassed against me, and that they also have walked contrary unto me. So you must now confess and admit that you were a rebel. Okay?
Du musst bekennen und zugeben, dass du ein Rebell warst.
And what did we read this morning? What does the Lord say to his people?
Was haben wir heute gelesen? Was sagt der Herr zu seinem Volk?
What must we do?
Was müssen wir tun?
Must return unto him, right?
Wir müssen uns zu ihm zurückwenden.
We,
Zurückkehren.
yes, exactly. Yeah. So we have this horse forehead.
Also wir haben diesen sturen Kopf.
Den Stirn wie eine Hure.
A horse,
Yes.
horse. Also eine Hurenstirn.
Okay. Because it's the straight testimony that comes here.
Denn
Right?
es ist die geradlinige Zeugnis, die hier aufkommt.
Tells you you're wretched, miserable, blind, poor, naked, and all these things.
Es zeigt dir, dass du elend und blind und nackt und bloß und ja, diese Dinge.
Because it's now, the flying roll is now revealed unto you, right?
Der fliegende Rolle ist dir geoffenbart worden.
Because that's what Zechariah saw, right?
Das ist das, was Zechariah sah.
So, in the flying roll is this curse that now comes upon you and you feel the condemnation of the law, okay?
Fliegende Rolle ist das, was über dich kommt und du spürst die Verdammnis des Herrn,
The law, the condemnation of the
die
law.
Verdammnis des Gesetzes.
Says that the law revived.
Yes, exactly.
Es sagt, das Gesetz lebte auf und ich starb.
Or the commandment came home, sin revived and I died.
Also das Gebot ist angekommen, Sünde erweckte und ich starb.
Okay, and this is the remedy. We need to then confess our sins and the sins of our fathers and accept that we walk contrary unto the Lord. Okay?
Dies ist das Heilmittel, dass wir unsere Sünden bekennen und die Sünden unseren Vätern und zugeben, dass wir wieder dem Herrn gewandelt sind.
Verse 41.
Vers 41.
And that I also have walked contrary unto them and have brought them into the land of their enemies. If then their uncircumcised hearts be humbled, and they then accept of the punishment of their iniquity, then will I remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham, will I remember, and I will remember the land. Okay? So you also need to accept then the punishment that came upon you.
So, du musst auch die Bestrafung annehmen, die über dich gekommen ist.
Okay. And the Lord always says, yeah, maybe just go there. I think it's Jeremiah 46, if
So,
I remember
Jeremia
correctly.
46,
Yes, Jeremiah 46. Verse 28.
Vers 28.
says, "Fear thou not, O Jacob, my servant, saith the Lord, for I am with thee, for I will make a full end of all the nations whither I have driven thee. But I will not make a full end of thee, but correct thee in measure, yet will I not leave thee wholly unpunished." Okay, so this is what he says, right? He will punish you, and you must accept this punishment.
So, das ist, was sagt. Wird dich bestrafen und du musst diese Bestrafung annehmen.
But it's not a full punishment,
Aber
right?
es ist keine volle Bestrafung.
So this is this punishment that comes here upon you.
Es ist diese Bestrafung, die hier über dich kommt.
But if you then use this punishment and understand it's not a punishment to destroy you, but a chastisement to save you.
Und wenn du diese Bestrafung benutzt, dass du verstehst, es ist nicht eine Bestrafung, um dich zu zerstören, sondern eher dich zu retten.
So chastisement to save you.
Also so, dass es eher eine Züchtigung ist, um dich zu retten.
And you will humble yourselves here, confess your sins, acknowledge God's righteousness. Then this becomes your remedy. Okay?
Wenn du dich hier demütigst und deine Sünden bekennst und Gottes Gerechtigkeit anerkennst, dann wird das deine Lösung hier.
Okay, so and then he will punish the enemies here at the end who didn't humble themselves. Okay.
Dann wird er die Feinde hier am Ende bestrafen, die sich nicht gedemütigt haben.
Okay. Yes, exactly.
Jesaja 27.
Because in Isaiah 27 it says, "Hath he smitten?"
And then it says in measure.
Yes.
In Jesaja 27 es sagt, hat er dich erschlagen, so wie er sie erschlagen hat? Also es ist nur im Maßen.
Yes. Okay. And that's why when this here comes, what do many immediately do?
Und deswegen, wenn das hier ankommt, was tun viele? Raise themselves to resist.
Immediately resist it, right?
So, sie stellen sich sofort dagegen.
Because they say,
How should we not know?
"How am I somebody with a horse forehead?" Okay,
So,
I'm righteous.
werden sie sagen, wie bin ich jemand mit einem Hurenstern? Ich bin doch gerecht.
And that's why Satan always tries to bring in these false holiness doctrines, okay,
Deswegen versucht Satan immer diese falsche Heiligkeitslehren hineinzubringen.
that you will reject the straight testimony eventually. Okay?
Dass du letztendlich der geradlinige Zeugnis ablehnen willst.
Because you will say, "This does not apply to me." Yeah.
Ja, du wirst sagen, das ist für mich nichts.
Mhm.
Das ist nichts für mich
Okay.
anzuwenden.
So, so now let's go back to Micah 7.
So, zurück zu Micha 7,
So let's just read one more time, verse 9.
so Vers 9 nochmal.
"I will bear the indignation of the Lord because I have sinned against him, until he plead my cause and execute judgment for me." So he executes judgment for you at the end, right?
So, er führt Gericht für dich hier am Ende aus.
"He will bring me forth to the light, and I shall behold his righteousness." Yeah. So this is what it says, "They shall see his face." Right?
So, das ist es, was wenn er sagt, sie werden sein Angesicht sehen.
Okay, and then verse 10.
Vers 10.
"Then she that is mine enemy shall see it, and shame shall cover her which said unto me, Where is the Lord my God? Thy God, sorry. Where's the Lord thy God? Mine eyes shall behold her, now shall she be trodden down as the mire of the streets." Okay, so this enemy will be punished, right?
So, dieser Feind wird bestraft.
And it's a she in this illustration.
Und in dieser Darstellung ist es dann sie.
Okay. And when she gets punished, she will be trodden down as mire of the streets, right?
Und wenn sie bestraft wird, wird sie niedergetreten wie der Schmutz der Straße.
So it's this woman,
Das
right?
ist diese Frau.
Woman trodden down
Diese Frau, die niedergetreten wird,
as mire.
wie Straßendreck.
Okay. And then verse 11.
Vers 11.
"In the day that thy walls are to be built, in that day shall the decree be far removed." So when she gets punished, what happens with the decree?
So, wenn sie bestraft wird, was geschieht mit dem Dekret?
It's far removed, right?
Das ist weit entfernt.
Okay. So
Insects.
yes, remove from you the northern arm. Exactly.
Es ist wie in den Insekten. Also ich werde die Nordarmee von dir fernhalten.
Okay, so for the first group it would be here and
The rest,
But-
yeah.
the rest here.
So für die erste Gruppe, das wäre dann hier, der Rest aber hier.
Okay, and let's continue, verse 12.
Vers 12.
In that day also he shall come even to thee from Assyria, and from the fortified cities, and from the fortress, even to the river, and from the sea to sea, and from mountain to mountain. So who will now come?
Wer wird jetzt kommen? So,
Those from Assyria, right?
so die von Assyrien.
And from the fortified cities, and from sea to sea, from mountain to mountain. So what does it illustrate?
So, was stellt das hier dar?
Yeah, all the Gentiles will come flocking to you,
Die
right?
Heiden werden zu dir strömen.
Okay, and this is exactly here when the decree is removed. I mean, perfectly it's here removed, right? And now the Gentiles come.
Das ist, wenn die Dekret entfernt wird, und das ist perfekt hier, wo all die Heiden zuströmen.
Okay, good. I think we can maybe close this evening now, okay, because this next bit is a new thought
Ich glaube,
added to it.
wir werden heute an diesem Punkt Schluss machen, denn das nächste ist ein neues Gedanke, der dazu gehört.
And we can just continue then tomorrow evening.
Und wir werden morgen Abend mit diesem Gedanke fortsetzen.
Okay, but everybody could see that this time here will be a time of where you only can trust in God, okay?
Aber jeder konnte sehen, dass diese Zeit hier ist eine Zeit, wo du nur in Gott vertrauen kannst.
And because everybody will try to save his own life, right?
Weil jeder wird versuchen, sein eigenes Leben zu retten.
Unless you're founded upon God's word and His promises. Okay?
Es sei denn, dass du auf Gottes Wort und seine Verheißungen gebaut hast.
But you don't know about anybody else, whether he's shaking in his heart at the moment or whether he stands firm, right?
Du weißt von niemand anders, ob sie nun im Herz erschüttert sind oder ob sie feststehen.
And that's why your only helper will be God here.
Und deswegen deine einzige Hilfe in dieser Zeit wird Gott selbst sein.
And we must expect everything will be taken from us. Okay.
Und wir müssen erwarten, dass uns alles genommen wird.
And we understand this is then when they will come and force this serpent bite upon you.
Wir
Okay.
verstehen, dass dies der Zeit ist, wo sie kommen werden und diesen Schlangenbiss dir anzwingen wollen.
Okay. So I hope everybody could follow.
Also ich hoffe, jeder konnte folgen.
Is there any question left?
Gibt es Fragen?
Okay, then let's close with our prayer round.
Dann lasst uns mit unserer Gebetsrunde Schluss machen.